This program is called a bot. How do you define one of these?
A bot is simply a program, lines of code working together, compiled and executed to come out with an end result, and it doesn't require human intervention. It just runs on its own once it's been executed.
Now, if I'm reading it right, what young Joshua Browder's come up with is a program where if you get a parking fine or a parking ticket, you basically sign on to this. It asks you a series of questions, and it automatically programs your appeal or whatever it is, your legal process, and prints it out. Is that how it works?
It is exactly how it works, Nick. It might ask, for example, were you the one driving, and was it hard to read the parking signs? All these suggestive and lead-on questions, which, if you go through structurally, you're actually having like a conversation with another person. So the algorithm that Browder has built is based on conversation algorithms. So it uses keywords, pronouns, structures of sentences, how words fit together in phraseology, and it comes out with a letter that you can then post for an appeal.
And evidently, it's a letter that makes a great deal of sense because, as far as I understand it, since late last year, I think the successful appeals have gone to around $3 million worth of parking fines.
Yes, I would say, Browder's initial motivation for building this kind of algorithm was possibly because he was ill-treated and felt hard done by when he was fined by something. One can only speculate. But $3 million, Nick, it's a lot of money, and I don't think all of those appeals possibly were legitimate. I would say we're in a risk-based, liability-based society today that says, well, I was late to my parking location because my doctor was late and he was over 45 minutes late, and so my flight was late, and so why should I pay? It's like this payment protection insurance mechanism that's now really pervasive everywhere. So just pass the blame on to somebody else, and $3 million is a lot of revenue.
It sure is. I mean, what immediately springs to mind, Katrina, is can the bot tell if you're telling the truth? You could tell it a fake answer.
Oh, it can tell. I think the countermeasure to this, Nick, will be when the police or the organisation about traffic and fines will say, well, guess what, Mr. Browder, we're going to build another bot that actually scans the letters that you submit or is submitted by your clients, and if they're too perfect, we'll know, and so they weren't written by humans, and we'll investigate further on those cases. And so to give you a ranking that says, 90% confident it was written by a machine because it's just too squeaky clean as a letter.
It's that bot versus bot actually is quite scary when you think about it.
Do you know what, Nick? It's like reinforcement learning, and that's really a term that's being used in the machine learning atmosphere today. It's when, like, Deep Blue went against, another player, for example, for a game, and it tries to outdo. It's two bots trying to outdo each other, and finally one has to buckle. Otherwise, we're stuck in this endless loop of, well, my bot's better than yours, and my lawyer's better than yours, and I'm going to win this case. No, I'm going to win this case. And so I think we're going to have bot warfare in the future, to be honest.
I guess the other question is, should the legal profession be worried with software like this being developed?
I guess the legal profession is fighting AI deeply. They've still got young people graduating and doing mundane tasks, repetitive tasks, and really that's where lawyers have gained their experience doing those everyday tasks that a lawyer needs to learn to then have some kind of social insight and precedence and justice. But how can you win against deep analytics and data mining and machine learning of bots when you've got a certain amount of workforce in your company, and yet the bot, it runs endlessly overnight, doesn't get tired and can keep going. So law firms are looking far away and going, we don't want to touch this stuff. But the thing is, we have companies like Lex Machina now and academics now coming up with their own database solutions and going, well, we're going to get into this business, the patent business, for example, and we're going to capitalize and make money for an nth of the price that these other organizations are charging in the law faculty and firms. But is a computer ever going to be a practicing lawyer? And I would say no, because he hasn't passed its bar exams.
True, but nevertheless you're saying, the machine can consistently learn. The capacity and the actual processing power gets more and more each day. Will, our bots get smarter at doing this?
They will, because they're continuously learning. So the more data we feed them, the more capable and stronger and robust they become, because they're following algorithms and they're learning, if I could say, like a little child is learning after trial and error. My caution here is that a bot could never have social insight, and that's the difference when we look at, for example, court judges. Could you ever imagine a bot, coming down with the judgment of a big murder case, for example? And yes, it would be great to go through and look at the precedence cases and say, well, finally, the bot would think this. But in actual fact, what a bot does not have, what AI does not have for the time being, is social insight. And as soon as things get subjective, I would worry about bots that have inherent subjectivity and biases based on the programmer. So right now, Browder's doing this perhaps, for a particular reason. But what if you had fraudulent kinds of lawyers entering the scape that could do bots and then, really have people who should be behind bars actually set free? That is a problem.
On the other side, intelligences that actually learn about you and about your habits and continue to learn. We're hearing about the technology nowadays that doesn't take up half a room and weigh tons. We're talking about devices that can actually sit on a bedside table now, aren't we?
Totally. There's the Amazon Echo that was launched a few years back, and even Hello Barbie, which we have being sold as toys by Mattel to young people under the age of 6, for example. And we're now being taught in this new environment to have conversations with our machines, to almost love our machines. People say that they love their Apple device. Well, I think it's not long into the future where people might be having love affairs with the Amazon Echo and having deep and meaningful, intimate conversations with them. And that's not far-fetched at all. I see some YouTube clips at the moment where a lot of people are testing how far you can take the natural language processing, and it's further than what the average person really understands unless they've seen it for their own eyes.
I mean, a lot of people will have experienced, even I think, with smartphones, that nowadays, without almost, and in some cases, I've got some personal experience of this. My wife's smartphone actually just observes her travels to and from work, and has now started giving her a little chime that comes in the morning. It says, from here on in, it's going to take you this many minutes to drive to work with this much delay.
Exactly. I mean, Google had launched their program, Google Now, for example, another one, and Apple Siri, and we can go on and on. My concern with having the rich sensor data embedded in our smartphones, I mean, I own one. I know that there are about 14 different sensors that log my location, log time, distance, speed. They know if I'm walking fast, if I'm going upstairs or downstairs. They might know my pulse rate, my temperature. Put all these things together, and my husband and I have been researching these sensor-rich devices, and we call it ubervalence. It's when things really get into your head, or bots can get into your head, and it's exactly where, for the last 10 years, marketing organizations have been using AI to think about how they could get you to buy more. So all these online ads that we see, they're pretty much bot-driven. It's data-driven decisions based on your preferences.
It's an incredible scenario. I mean, I'm very hopeful that we won't get to the kind of Skynet situation you saw in the Terminator movies, but it edges towards it at times, doesn't it?
I think we're really close to a period of time where we're going to have to make some massive decisions. I mean, Merrill Lynch is saying that 47% of tasks of employees will be automated by 2020. And when you read things like that, you're thinking, so what is going to happen? We're already going into our supermarket stores and scanning our own items. And I can guarantee you we're being watched while we're scanning our own items. But there's a lot of intelligence that goes into that. There's a lot of after-marketing thought that goes into that. And I would say for the time being, I'm quite comfortable with humans as opposed to bots making decisions about my lifestyle and my choices.
Yeah, I must admit, and in the same vein, I find it scary. I'm now getting emails from my supermarket based on my previous shopping to tell me how much I could save in the coming week. It comes down to that.
It does. It surely does. And I think there's something about authenticity here, legitimacy, ethics, underlying societal trajectories. Where are we headed? And it's as a community. It's not really just as individuals within a working society. But what happens, I think, once we let the bots run free is that the time that it takes to process things in our own brains, okay, we start to speed up. And I think people start to get stressed because the bot can respond really quick and say, you put something in and it spits something out. And I think these shorter cycles are mucking about with people's stress levels, working conditions, just general well-being in society, and we don't realize that it's happening to us because it's another email, it's another voicemail, it's another bot response from some automated system that says, yes, we've received your inquiry and we'll attend to you, but it's no one attending to you at that moment. And I think we're growing increasingly frustrated because the shorter these cycles are, the more in overload we are as humans, and we're analog. Nick, we're not digital beings, we're not bots, we never will be bots. And I would hate to see us drifting towards a society that is really about cost-saving measures to the point where, okay, organizations and certain people make millions of dollars from these programs, but the rest of us are sitting there as slaves to a central master device.
And by the sound of it, feeling quite stressed about the whole process too.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm an editor of a magazine called Technology and Society magazine, and about 11 years ago, some MIT research students auto-generated research conference papers, and they had a game going for about 3 or 4 years to see if they could bust through a peer-reviewed cycle. And I know as an editor, having received some of these dud bot-level papers, that even when you pass it through the reviewer's mindset and you go to 3 reviewers and you go, have a look at this, paper. Is it legit? It sounds legit. It smells legit. It's structured even better than what you've ever seen before. And you think, but there's something not right about this. It's too perfect. And sometimes we've uncovered, these research students, just like Browder, who's at Stanford, trying to bust through magazines with dud papers which really have been written by machines and not people. And they've succeeded only because the machine is getting so good at language processing. It's getting so good at phraseology, and only the best editors, I would say, and reviewers could actually figure out in the future whether these newspaper articles or these journal articles are coming from people and not machines.